Well, we did it. We did get the snow overnight, and turns out I was right. I must have lucked out on that one. We picked up about 5 or 6 inches overall. So about an inch when I recorded yesterday, plus probably another 5 more overnight. We're sitting around 6 inches of snow here, about a mile and a half east of Harlan, Iowa. It sure is pretty. And I did go out earlier to check out the roads, and here's what they look like from my dash cam. Pretty snow-packed, and look at that blowing snow. Visibility's got down to nothing at times, and of course blowing fresh snow across the road. So not the best, but passable, and they're starting to improve a little bit right now. The plows are out, they're treating the roads too. And sorry about the wind noise, but there's wind blowing the snow around. Also, of course, went around town, went to our coffee shop at the church and took a few pictures in town. This is our beautiful courthouse in the snow. And this picture I like to call my little town. So it's just gorgeous out here. Now the forecast is looking very interesting. Of course, we still have this storm snowing and blowing in eastern Iowa, moving towards Chicago and the Great Lakes. And we'll talk about that here in just a bit. We have a clipper system affecting portions of the plains in the Midwest coming later this week. And behind that brutal cold air that we've been talking about, we'll update that. Also, in the near future, we have an ice storm for Portland, Oregon. Classic setup with cold air blowing through the gorge. We'll outline that. And it looks like an ice storm and snow for the south. We'll talk about that in detail as well. With more on all of this, let's pitch it into the studio. Mike, take it from here. Looks like you're having fun out there. Thanks a lot, Mike. Let's get into it. A lot going on still, even though we got our snow here in western Iowa, still snowing in eastern Iowa. So let's take a look first at the hazards across the country, and they're still numerous with our exiting storm that hasn't exited yet. So we still have winter storm warnings going on from, the ones in eastern Nebraska, western Iowa, set to expire here within the hour. It's 11:05 as I'm recording on Tuesday, January 9th. Oh yeah, another snow day. Pretty nice. But winter storm warnings continuing for eastern Iowa as you get into Illinois and up into Wisconsin, surrounded by winter weather advisories. I think that includes you, Kansas City, all the way down to portions of Arkansas and Oklahoma. And then you see that vast area of brown, that's wind. So we're still looking at, wind advisories and across much of the country. And that is from this storm. And also, we have tornado watches. We have severe thunderstorm warnings. And we have one tornado warning as I'm recording this, or at least when I captured this, this graphic, not even a half hour ago, less than that. So we are seeing a warning, recently there in the panhandle of Florida. You got tornado watch and severe thunderstorm warnings around that. And that should be moving into into the mid-Atlantic coastal areas as we go through the day. So keep an eye out for that. Further to the north, as that heavy rain spreads northward and continues to rain on, what was heavy snow as well. Like North Carolina, just the rain itself, you have, coastal flood warnings, you have flood warnings, you have flood watches all the way up the coast. New Jersey's included, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Connecticut, Massachusetts. I can't tell if Rhode Island's in there a little bit or not. And then a little bit of snow too on the backside, the north side. And then the Pacific Northwest, our next storm moving in. So tons of snow, winter storm warnings for most of Oregon. If not, it's a blizzard warning. And then there's some high wind watches and wind advisories there too. Same for Washington, Cascades, the Olympic Mountains, also blizzard warnings. You get into the interior, Idaho, looks like winter storm warnings there. Up into northwest Montana, further south in the valley, south of Kalispell, winter storm watches, winter weather advisories, wind as well. And that goes for you, Wyoming into Colorado and Utah. Meanwhile, southwestern Arizona still with those freeze warnings. Looks like Yuma might be included in that. And some heavy snow for the mountains of Northern California and the Sierra Nevada. So still a lot going on from this one storm and the new storm that's moving in. So we can show you that, of course, with the GFS this morning. It's, barely morning. It's afternoon for the East Coast as I'm recording. So here's where the low is now. This is noon o'clock Central Time on the 9th. The low centered Indiana-Illinois border right here. Behind that, strong winds, still snowing in parts of Iowa. Our snow ended maybe a couple hours ago. Actually, there were a few flakes still coming down when I was out there an hour ago. And we've got light snow back into Missouri. And the strong winds, as you saw earlier, blowing the snow here across the road, and low visibilities at times with that. So still kind of dangerous conditions out here. Of course, the country roads, there were a few people out, not too many people out this morning, so just take it easy. But be careful. Heavy snow coming down northern Illinois into Wisconsin and now into Michigan. Rain for Ohio, Indiana, and then the heavy rain and the severe weather going on here across the southeast. Heavy snow in the mountains of the Cascades and the Olympics. Very heavy snow. And see how these isobars are very tight as well. So strong winds blowing into Washington and Oregon. With that rain coming down, snow in the Siskiyous. So that's how things are right now. So we'll move things into the future. Time keeps on slipping. Anyway, so snow and wind for Michigan later on today. This is midnight tonight. Light snow now, Indiana into Kentucky and Ohio, even parts of West Virginia. Meanwhile, the Pacific Northwest seeing a lot of snow. Portland might be included in this, or at least like Gresham. But it does look like snow almost all the way down to the coast, and some heavy rain in the Willamette Valley further south. Now, as we go into tomorrow, we see low elevation snows in Oregon and Washington. And, of course, eastern Oregon, it's colder there. Usually you get the cold air dams up against the Cascade Mountains, colder on the east side of the mountains than the west usually. But it looks like cold enough for snow, maybe Willamette Valley. We've got some snow coming down in here in Idaho as our storm exits into Canada, taking heavy rain and snow there. Heavy rain still hanging on into Maine and whatnot tomorrow morning, but then that's finally out of here, light snow behind it. Now we're watching this little clipper system, Alberta Clipper, some light snow moving into Nebraska and into Iowa. This is Wednesday afternoon, evening, so slight chance of some light snow, half the calories of our regular snow. That gains a little bit of strength as it moves into Wisconsin. And behind that, here comes the cold. It's going to be the real deal. We'll show you those temperatures here in a second. And then another storm forming Thursday into Friday with some snow into Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa, also parts of Missouri, as the cold air dives south into the panhandle of Texas. And this starts to get a little bit more organized. So the heavier snow, at least on this model run, we're a few days away, 3 days away. So the heaviest snow into Kansas and Missouri, but still lighter snow to moderate snow into Iowa and Nebraska. And watch this thing wind up a little bit. Those lines are getting close together again. So some wind, heavy snow now coming down in Illinois, on top of the heavy snow that's coming down right now in Illinois. Look at these winds up here in Montana. My goodness. And with the snow in the Cascades, keep an eye on this too. We're going to show you the classic ice setup for Portland. This storm gathering strength and snow spreading into Missouri. A little bit of ice here as well. And some thunderstorms ahead of it, trailing down into the south with some rain across the southeast, and into Kentucky, some heavy rain. Some pretty good rains for Indiana as well, and into Ohio. Meanwhile, western Washington getting hammered with snow into the Cascades of Oregon, rain and the coastal areas of Oregon. And then as we move forward, we see the heavier rain setting up in Oregon. This is snow for Seattle. And this storm getting stronger, lots of wind, lots of snow, Illinois into Indiana, northern Ohio, Lighter snow in Michigan, but some strong winds. Could we see another blizzard maybe on the 13th? Well, this is actually the 12th, about 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock Eastern time on the 12th. My goodness. Meanwhile, we're seeing some ice here. So keep an eye on that as well. Heavy rain for the Oregon coast, but we're seeing some ice forming here, and then heavy snows in the Cascades, and then heavy snow around this storm as it moves off into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. So again, strong winds, blowing snow, Indiana, and into Michigan. Rain changing to snow in Ohio. Lots of rain coming down out ahead of it. Heavy snow for New York. And we're getting a little bit more ice over here in western Washington. Now, we're starting to see the ice form on the Columbia River Gorge. We're going to zoom on this later in the broadcast. And we'll show you exactly this classic setup. But rain coming on Oregon coast, snow up in Seattle still, and our storm winding up. We are now into Saturday morning. This is 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. on the East Coast. Lots of wind, light snow blowing around West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, back into Michigan. And our ice storm is starting to form here in the Columbia River Gorge, parts of western Washington. Still heavy rain for western Oregon. And this is, again, the morning of the 13th. More ice for the Columbia River Gorge, and then it's gone. Okay. All right. Well, I guess the Pacific system that's very strong here off the Washington coast, enough to push that cold air back into the eastern side of the mountains. As our storm exits here, this is our next one, and this is pretty heavy snow coming down for Spokane, down to Boise, and some strong winds. Also, as this cold air is moving into Montana Saturday. My goodness. And then that storm starts to form. And Sunday, very cold here. Again, I'll show you that in a second. And watch this cold air heading southward as well. So the 540 line, usually the freezing line. So a cold front here. Some light snow against Kansas and Missouri into Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky on the 14th around noon. And then another storm forms. This brings ice and snow down as far south as Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, a southern ice storm for Mississippi, parts of Louisiana, now moving into Alabama, and then it peters out before it gets to Georgia. Congratulations, Georgia. And the cold air pressing southward into the South Plains of Texas, into central Texas as well. Cold in the center of the country. How cold? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is Sunday morning temperatures across the country. Oh my goodness. I don't have a pointer for this, but of course my eye goes immediately to Iowa because that's where I live. Negative single digits and negative teens. These are actual air temperatures at 6 a.m. Sunday when I'm picking up the donuts before church. Now, I didn't even pull up the wind chill. I should have done that. So the wind chills in Iowa at this time are going to be minus 25, minus 30, and colder as you head north because Minnesota, actually those temperatures pretty similar, minus teens across Minnesota with the wind, minus 25, minus 30. You get into South Dakota, similar. Nebraska, not quite as cold, but minus single digits. Much of Kansas, minus single digits. North Dakota, minus 20s. Wind chills, minus 40s, perhaps. Into Montana, wind chills, minus teens and 20s. There's a minus 25 at Havre, Montana. Those wind chills could be down close to minus 50. And Wyoming, minus single digits and minus teens. And this cold air is spilling into Illinois. So minus single digits for Chicago, minus double digits for, as you get towards Rockford and out into eastern Illinois, minus single digits for northern Indiana and moving into Ohio as well. So it's going to be very cold. So, but then Sunday, the sun comes out. It's going to be not very warm. So, high temperatures below zero for Iowa, northern Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota, much of Wisconsin, North Dakota, much of Montana, except the other side of the mountains, maybe single digits for you. And then same for Wyoming, minus temperatures for highs on Sunday, single digit highs in Kansas and Missouri and Illinois and Indiana, and busting out into the teens for Ohio, at least parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania. But even the east is going to be kind of cold with this. And then watch out. So then the sun goes down, and towards Monday morning, 6 a.m., minus teens for Iowa, except for yeah, that's right. And then Nebraska minus single digits. I don't know, just look at the map. You can see for yourself. But these temperatures, minus 20s into Wyoming and Montana. And that cold air has pressed further southward. 10 degrees, Lubbock, Texas. Monday morning, 4 in Amarillo. 10 near Dallas. 13 near Paris or Texarkana. 21, is that you, Austin? 29, San Antonio. So very cold temperatures. And of course, if you're in the central to northern plains and the upper Midwest and even into the northern Rockies, central Rockies too, it's just going to be brutal cold. Oh my goodness. All right, let's take a look at this Portland ice storm. I have a freeze. This was actually from the previous run of the GFS. And this is Saturday the 13th at 6 o'clock Central. So Portland's 2 hours earlier than that. So this is 4 a.m. Saturday, according to the GFS, looking ahead to Saturday. So we're a few days out. I wish I had my pointer on this, but if I'll just describe it to you. If you look, you can see the Oregon-Washington coast and the Northern California coast. And that's rain and heavy rain for western Oregon, so the Willamette Valley and to the coast. You get across the Columbia River into Washington, and you see ice all the way to the coast, and then that changes to snow as you get through Olympia into Tacoma, Seattle, and Bellingham, and then, of course, for the Cascades. Now, that pink area along the Columbia River Gorge extends into the Portland area. And this is a typical, I grew up here, so I mean, this is not unusual. It happens almost every year, pretty much. So what happens is you get that very cold air that dams up against the Cascades east of the mountains, and it has nowhere to go except it blows through the Columbia River because the Columbia's, carved that nice little gorge that's gorgeous if you haven't been there. See what I did there? And so the wind, that east wind blows through the gorge, and that cold air pools in the Portland area. And then as the moisture moves in from the Pacific, it rides over the dense cold air, rains, super cools those droplets, and when it hits the ground, freezes on contact, and everything gets covered with a sheet of ice. And if this comes true, and of course subject to change because Saturday's a few days away, we could have a classic ice storm for Portland around the 13th. Thankfully, it's a Saturday, so not as many people work on Saturdays. And so if things have to get shut down, that's probably a good day to do it. But it's a possibility you've got an ice storm coming for the Portland area. And we already showed you, that chance for ice and snow in the south later on in the week as well. So a lot going on still. And there may be another storm behind that one. And it looks like the cold temperatures here in the Midwest, I don't think we're going to get above freezing. I don't know when. When I was going through the temperature maps, it showed us below freezing through the 21st. So the next 12 days not getting above freezing, and an extended period below zero, which I didn't realize this, but I heard on the news in Omaha, they did not get below zero last year. So colder than it's been for a while, at least here in the Midwest. Well, that's my update, and I'm sticking to it. It's a snow day. I'm having a great time and loving life. I'm just really happy. I just love snow. So I'm kind of giddy like a kid. I'm going to get a sled. I don't have a sled yet, so I need to get a sled for the next time this happens. All right, that's my update today. Of course, we'll keep you updated because there's a lot still going on, and we'll talk to you soon on the Weather Mic.